joined us, or rejoining us on Facebook at some time, either this afternoon, maybe later this week. But we're glad to have everyone here. A story. Sam Rayburn, and I dislike using American stories, but this is a good one. Sam Rayburn served as a Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States Congress for 17 years. As the Speaker of the House, he wielded incredible power and prestige. He was third in the line of succession to the presidency, should anything happen. Late one night, he found out that the teenage daughter of a reporter friend had tragically died. Early the next morning, Sam Rayburn knocked on the door of his friend. When the door opened, Rayburn asked if there was anything he could do. His friend stammered and replied, "I don't think there's anything you can do. We're just making the arrangements." "Well, have you had your coffee this morning?" Rayburn asked. And the grieving man said, "No, we haven't had time." "Well," the Speaker of the House replied, "I can at least make the coffee." As he watched his powerful man make coffee, the father suddenly remembered something. "Mr. Speaker, I thought you were supposed to be having breakfast at the White House this morning." "Well, I was, but I called the president, told him that I had a friend who was in trouble, and I couldn't come." Sam Rayburn turned down a place at the breakfast table with the President of the United States to make coffee for a grieving friend. Great humility can be exercised by people of great power. It's all about pride and humility. In other words, our attitude about ourselves. Let's center ourselves in song.
Gather
relationship with you and your creation. We again hear how your priorities may be different than ours. Let us learn to be truer to your goals today. Help us sit in the right place, let go of our stubbornness and self-importance, and instead engage in mutual love as you have taught us. Beginning now with these words in the song. Remain committed to your partner in any kind of loving relationship. So today we're going to move on to the 8th commandment. Anybody know it? Failed Sunday school. Every one of you. Come on, 8th. We're getting down to the bottom of the barrel here.
Their false witness?
Nope. You're ahead. Thou shalt not steal. Oh, how conveniently we have all forgotten. I was telling Liz and Ruth yesterday at the pool that I feel as if a week of the summer has been stolen from me because the kids are going back to school a week ahead of Labor Day. For me, summer is the last day of school to Labor Day. So because they're going back, I feel as if it's been stolen. Because some are short, right? And therefore precious enough that, but without losing a week, even if I don't go to school anymore, but you have this idea. But anyway, we're talking about stealing in the commandment. We always think of taking things, without paying for them, without permission, without the right to take it. And we all know it's wrong to steal. We've got that, and it's a no-brainer. But I read about a young girl, and she said that it was all right for her to steal $40 worth of makeup because the company makes $40 million and they wouldn't miss it. She obviously doesn't realize that the store builds in theft recovery into their cost, which reflects on the prices that we pay. But that's how she rationalized it. So here's another thing to consider. When does borrowing become stealing? 1 week after you haven't returned it? Whatever you borrowed? A month? A year?
Never.
Yeah. What about stealing back what's yours? Is that stealing? And somebody's borrowed something and you just sort of give up and sneak into their garage and take it out? Yeah. I remember those things, that have gone by the wayside over years. Part of me said that I can't really remember who I lent it to, but that's the other problem. Another consideration is what about taking, and now Ian, you know this one, what about taking good stuff from the dump? That's recycling. That's recycling, right. You're not supposed to. And I remember down in Toronto years and years ago, you weren't even, like if somebody put out dresser with $1,000 for the garbage because they didn't want it anymore, you were not supposed to pick it up and take it. Well, that was stealing. Yeah. But no, I'm with Ian, definitely. Yeah, it's recycling. But I guess the most important thing, you know, for me in this, what's stealing, what are the intangible things that can be stolen? You can work on this one. Come on.
Innocence.
Who?
Innocence.
Innocence. Oh, good one. Okay, please note, guilty person spoke up first. Shame none. Shame none. Shame none. Come on. What else can be stolen?
Trust.
Trust. Oh, good. Okay.
Time.
Time. Oh, yeah.
Spirit.
Spirit. Yeah.
Hope.
Hope. Oh, yeah. Here's one.
Confidence.
Pardon?
Confidence.
Confident. Oh. You've got it. You've got it. Here's one we break every Sunday. Every Sunday. Anybody know what it is? Intellectual property.
Oh, yeah.
Intellectual property. See that screen out there and all those hymns written on there? Intellectual property. We've done it. So, yeah. Reputation. Reputation. Yeah, what about library of books overdue? Yeah, I had a friend that had her whole back seat filled with library books. She was a homeschooler and she almost forgot to take them back. Yeah. Yeah. Are they still stolen if we return them after 5 years? Yeah. Yeah. Somebody said that you have that no one can steal what's in your mind and heart. Sounds very nice, but I don't think it's true. Yeah. Because I think about peace of mind. Peace of mind. And the love you have in your heart. And the big one for me, it always doesn't came to it, is the memories by Alzheimer's. They're stolen. Yeah. So how can we amend this commandment, thou shalt not steal, in a more positive way? Okay, let's see that. This is just a very simple one. We respect what belongs to others in any form. So if you have a better wording for that one, please text me, email me, call me on my phone. Yeah, if you have a better idea, that would be wonderful. Let's sing. So Jesus is still hanging around with the Pharisees. I think he must have been a masochist, because he actually does a second healing in their presence again on the Sabbath. And we all know how he humiliated them last week. But I haven't included this second event today. We already know that it's going to provoke them, make them angry. But Lois is going to share with us the second part of our lectionary reading today.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So this is Luke chapter 14, verses 1, and then 7 to 14. One time when Jesus went for a Sabbath meal with one of the top leaders of the Pharisees, all the guests had their eyes on him, watching his every move. He told a story to the guests around the table, noticing how each had tried to elbow into the place of honor. He said, when someone invites you to dinner, don't take the place of honor. Somebody more important than you might have been invited by the host. Then he'll come and call out in front of everybody, you're in the wrong place. The place of honor belongs to this man. Red-faced, you'll have to make your way. You'll have to make your way to the very last table, the only place left. So, when you're invited to dinner, go and sit at the last place. Then, when the host comes, he may very well say, friend, come up to the front. That will give the dinner guests something to talk about. What I'm saying is, if you walk around with your nose in the air, you're going to end up flat on your face. But if you're content to be simply yourself, you will become more than yourself. Then he turned to the host. The next time you put on a dinner, don't just invite your friends and family and rich neighbors, the kind of people who will return the favor. Invite some people who never get invited out. The misfits from the wrong side of the tracks. You will be and experience a blessing. They won't be able to return the favor, but the favor will be returned. Oh, how it will be returned at the resurrection of God's people. May we find in these sacred treasured words of old new meaning and hope for our challenging times.
Author and minister Tony Campolo tells a story of his experience at dinner in Port-au-Prince in Haiti some years ago. He was checking up on their missions programs that his organization was involved in Haiti, and he just wanted to see how the workers were doing. It was definitely an emotional and draining week, because these are often young people who for the first time were exposed to heartbreaking conditions that many suffer in third world countries. And it could quickly take its toll. Anyway, he was tired and peopled out. So it was a great relief when he sat down to eat a good dinner at a French restaurant in the heart of Port-au-Prince. He had been seated next to the window so that he could enjoy watching the activity out in the streets. The waiter set a delicious meal in front of him. Tony was about to dive in when he happened to look to his right. There, with their noses pressed flat against the window, staring at his food, were 4 children of the streets. The waiter, seeing his discomfort, quickly moved in and pulled down the window shade, shutting out the disturbing sight of hungry children. The waiter then said to Tony, don't let them bother you. Enjoy your meal. Today, Jesus is challenging us to examine who and what we pull down the shades on. He knows it's an easy thing to do. We pull down the shades and we shut out the people we would rather not think about. We certainly pull down the shades on some of the world's problems. We can keep its heartbreak and pain at a distance, excuse me, that way, if only because it feels so overwhelming to open our hearts to all of it. Today, Jesus is teaching us about the kingdom of God through this parable about a wedding banquet, one of life's biggest celebrations. Weddings are events that reveal who we are, because we gather all the people who are most important to us in one place. All of those who are guests at our wedding are those we have known, who have influenced us, who we claim as important to us. For the most part, the people who gather at weddings are the same people that we sit at table with anytime. Family members, special friends, colleagues. They're people with whom we have shared countless meals, conversations, perhaps card games. I think Jesus is pushing us here to consider who is missing from our tables, to examine who we've pulled the shades down on, whom we've written off, whom we value less, because Jesus knows that whom we sit at table with matters both literally and figuratively, because they are the ones who shape who we are. The assumptions that we make about ourselves and others, the state of the community, the world, through our discussions. What Jesus has given us here is a parable that points us towards what it means to be in the kingdom of God right now. It would be easy for us to just make a blueprint of it and enact it to a T, but without too much thought or questioning. But parables demand that we work at understanding them. And to many, that's just too much work, takes too much time. But that's what he's trying to push us to do, to examine who we value, who we include, those we exclude and write off, those we pull the shades down on. Jesus is pushing us to reflect on these choices. But he also wants to be clear that just because we've pulled the shades down on certain folks, that doesn't mean that God has. Sometimes we make assumptions about people. We don't mean to. We see people, but we really don't see the real them. We don't even see their faces or their eyes. We see what we think we know about them. They fall into the category we create for them in our mind, a category that indicates how we are to respond to them. We see a person and they fit into a box of assumptions that we have made long ago before we perhaps even saw them. We might not do it intentionally, but it happens. I don't know about you, but as much as I want to avoid making assumptions, it happens all too frequently for me. Campolo tells another story about sitting with a group of very sophisticated intellectuals. As the conversation progressed, they began to really rag on evangelical Christianity. At one particular point, Campolo had had enough and decided to speak out against them. He said, "You guys have got the wrong idea. You judge evangelicals on the basis of some stupid displays of zeal. For instance, at every Super Bowl game, there's a crazy guy in the stands holding up a big sign with some Bible verse. He expects that somebody will look up that verse, fall under conviction, and be saved. You think that we're all like that. You judge us by that kind of stupidity." When he had finished this declaration, one of the men took the pipe he was smoking out of his mouth, set it down, and said, "Interesting you should mention that. 3 years ago, I was watching the Super Bowl. It was just before halftime when the Cowboys kicked an extra point. Behind the goalpost was the man that you were talking about, and he held up a sign that said, John 1, verse 12. Now, just as an aside, I always thought that it said John 3:16. Does anyone know what John 1, verse 12 says? But to all who received him, who believed in his name, he gave power to become the children of God. Anyway, the story continued with the man saying, "I didn't have anything else to do at halftime. So I reached up on the bookshelf of the den, pulled off my old Bible, and opened it up to John 1:12, just out of curiosity. When I opened it, There were some old notes from a Bible talk I'd heard at summer camp many years ago as a teenager. I read over those notes and took to heart what I'd forgotten. Then and there, I gave my life back to Jesus. And Paulo's response was, what could I say? My ridiculing of that crazy man's witnessing had received such condemnation. This was about assumptions. We can sometimes think that we are sitting way up higher on the banquet table than others. This man reminded Campolo that God's kingdom and God's vision, God already was up at the top, or this man was already up at the top of the table, and maybe we need to rethink about our own seat. The truth is that we pull down the shades on folks all the time, and we relegate them to a certain place at the table, and we forget that the shades we pull down or the spaces that we relegate are spaces in which the fellow children of God occupy. It's so easy for us to forget what it means to be claimed by God. It's easy for us to forget that we are the beloved. But just as easily, we can forget that God's belovedness extends beyond just ourselves. God claims and loves, and maybe even prioritizes the folks we think are further down the banquet table than we are. You see, Jesus was a good Jewish man. He knew his scriptures well. But what got the religious elite so angry with him was that he found the real message, the one that is found between the lines, that shifts the meaning from the one they thought they knew. Jesus in this parable is pushing those in our text and us today to remember, to relearn, that those about whom we make assumptions, those we think are at the seating section remarked the least or the less are people claimed and loved by God. Jesus challenges us to quit drawing lines and to quit making categories and to understand that people are much more than the boxes that we put them in. He's calling us to remember the sacred text that reminds us that through the eyes we see the soul in one another. He's inviting us to push up the shades today, even if that is just one person or one relationship in our lives. It could be the relationship that you have been estranged from for years. It could be the person with whom you disagree politically. It could be the person who might be right in front of you or beside you that our society barely notices. I bet we all have one person or people in our mind's eye that is hard to be with, to look at, to count as a child of God. Did anybody look at Pinterest last night? I don't know if it is. There was a story of a woman, and she was on the subway, and there was a man who was obviously, one of the least. And he had seats on either side of him, but no one would sit on them. No one. So she decided to sit with them. And she said she met a wonderful person that day. And they had a long conversation. He admired her tattoos. And he said to her, I'll bet you there are people that won't sit with you because of your tattoos. But he had a wonderful time. Take a moment right now and picture this person who's hard to look at for you. And imagine looking into that person's eyes. What do you see there? What surprises you there? How might their place at the table be different from what you assume or expect? Jesus wants us to remember that we belong to one another. This parable is inviting us to imagine what it would be like if we lived as though that was actually true. Imagine what that would look like for you. Imagine how that may look for us. Imagine how that may look in our community. May we lead from here together to see the world through eyes like that. Let's sing. Paul said, keep your lives free from the love of money, and do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Let us remember that money is just that, not our worth, and that it comes by chance and not according always to what we deserve. So we have gathered up what we can freely share that others may be cared for. So let us ask for a blessing on it. Holy God, please take these checks, these e-transfers, what we bring, and transform them now into something new.
May they show your hospitality, your love, and your justice as they push us towards your righteousness in this world. Amen.
What's going on? As I asked last week to come with, hopes, plans for the fall, what we might do, bring back some of the old stuff, have some new things to do. Just keep your imaginations open. On the back table there, I have put two piles. One on the left are for Presbyterians, and it's about your recent General Assembly, and it's Jack Jameson's report on what happened there. Interesting meeting. And it has a copy of the biography of the moderator. The moderator of the Presbyterian Church moderates that meeting, and he's not the spiritual leader of the church for the next year, though he does stick around and goes to meetings and things. But so then the next year there'll be a new moderator for the meeting chosen. It's like the chairperson of the meeting. Yeah. But and on the right there is for the United Church folk. There are the profile of the new moderator of the United Church, Reverend Dr. Carmen Lansdowne. The moderator for the Presbyterian Church is Reverend Dr. Rob Ferris. The moderator for the United Church now, who is in for 3 years as the spiritual leader for the church, is an Indigenous woman, Dr. Carmen Lansdowne. And so it's rather interesting that between these two denominations, we have a gay man and an Indigenous woman. Nobody else will ever be like us. Yes. So I gave out the cards to the people who have university students, grandchildren. None of us have children, I don't think. Yeah, but if there's anybody, I have one more card up here, and I can make more. But yeah, for one university student, we give them just a Tim Hortons gift, just to let them know that we're thinking about them. The flowers. Did anybody notice that the flowers are on?
Yeah, the kids took them down.
Ian and Sylvia had the young people up the other day, and so I said, would you like to do this? Anyway, they just took to it. And they even took out the staples, which I'm really impressed with. Yeah, so it was all flowers are at the back. If anybody wants to take some, you're more than welcome to take some. Yeah, they look lovely. If not, we'll put them in bags and store them somewhere. Yeah, but if anybody wants them, please take them. Is there anything? Oh, Communion Sunday. It's a Communion Sunday next Labor Day Sunday, so please come. Please come to eat. Yeah, this is good. Anything else happening? Oh, look at this. Hands. 3 hands. Yes, okay, start front. Liz? Oh, yeah. No, okay, forget it.
No.
You want to chat?
Jen's resurrecting community choir for us. So the third Thursday, we start here. It'll be at 7 o'clock that we'll be practicing here.
Third Thursday of the month, okay? Community choir.
Yeah. And the first one between 6:30 and 7, we'll have to sign in and get our meeting.
Okay, so 6:30 for this month.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then after that-
wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful, we've been missing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We need it.
It's only the third, or is it every Thursday we meet?
It's every Thursday.
It's every
Start-
Thursday, but
it
start
starts
on the third, okay.
Every Thursday, yeah.
Great, awesome. Doug?
Okay, I think it's time that we take a serious look at putting a ramp in this side here for a few years to get up. The stairs are getting too hard for a lot of people, so it's time we start looking at it seriously.
Well, so that's a thing to talk about for the next board meeting, which is when?
September. Towards the end of September.
September the,
Just a minute. I have it in my life book. Because we made it for the last one.
yeah.
Church board meeting Sunday, September the 18th after church.
September the 18th, okay.
So choir is the 15th.
Choirs are 50, okay. So we'll get that on the agenda, Doug. Yeah. And other hand is over here. Yeah, bye.
Do you know how Lillian is?
It's great.
Student rate, I was talking to her yesterday, the day before yesterday morning, or one of the 2 days. They said, how are you? She said, I'm amazing.
And she is. She really is. There.
Yes, Smile Cookies will be beginning on September 19th, and the proceeds will be going to the food bank again.
Okay.
That's Tim Hortons.
Tim Hortons, right?
Chocolate chip cookies.
Right. Did you need any help with that or anything, or like?
Maybe
You
we
need any
get
help with
delivery,
that?
I'll make the deliveries.
Yeah. I think we have a lot of kids there, apparently a lot of kids are going down
Oh, great.
because of either hours.
Yes, great. Okay. Yeah, Doc.
I hope everybody will welcome our guests here from the former Hillview Church with Laurel Coleman and Jerry and Eleanor Katona.
Yes. This is wonderful. Is there anything else? No?
Now it's my turn.
Now it's your turn. Gotcha. Okay. Sorry. This is a long poem.
minute for mission. Since Jesus first walked on this earth, Christians have been spiritually drawn to make pilgrimages to places connected to his birth, life, crucifixion, resurrection, and legacy. Today, pilgrimage hotspots include Obermagen in Germany, Lourdes and Taizé in France, and of course, the Holy Land. Here in Canada, thousands of Christian pilgrims make their way to the small town of Napanee, Ontario, to visit Old Hay Bay Church each year. The last Sunday in August is the highlight of the season, when the church hosts its annual pilgrimage service. What's the attraction? It's a mix of the history, scenery, spiritual connection, and community. An unassuming building clad with grey wood siding and wide doors that opens to a plain but sturdy sanctuary. Old Hay Bay Church was originally built on the shoreline of Hay Bay, which connects to the Bay of Quinte, and was built in 1792. It is the oldest Methodist building and one of the oldest churches in Canada. Now it belongs to the United Church of Canada, and your generosity through mission and service helps ensure that it will continue to be a place of pilgrimage for years to come. Elaine Fairley, chair of the Board of Trustees and one of the church custodians, explains that the building, originally referred to as the Meeting House, was the center of the rapid growth of Methodism and hosted the first camp meeting in 1805. Methodism grew into the largest Protestant group in Canada and was the largest communion that became the United Church in 1925, she says. The founders reflect any United Church congregation today. They came from various countries of origin and had a wide variety of skills and knowledge, but together they made a strong voice, speaking of God, their community, and their future. Fairley warns that she could enthusiastically go on and on about why the small church in rural Ontario is so important, but she sums it up with 3 short sentences. Old Hay Bay Church has earned its place in the history of Methodism and the United Church of Canada. It is not just a building but also a sacred place of our ancestors, as well as a pilgrimage place for us and our descendants. And it is a special place in people's hearts. Thank you for helping to preserve important historical, theological, and pilgrimage sites through your mission and service gifts.
Has anyone ever been there?
No, never heard of it before.
No, neither did I, yeah. Don't know how 1,000 people get in there, but that's all right. Imaginative. Let's pray. Caring God, you watch as we go about our lives. So maybe we should ask, does what we do, how we act, what we say, please you? Does how we relate to the least of your children follow what we have been taught in your son's parables and his own life example? Forgive us when we have been less than faithful to what we have said we believe in. What should be behind all of our actions? May your Spirit prod us to raise the blinds we lower, whether it be out of apprehension, lack of trust, greed, self-preservation, fear. May we always try to look past a person's outside to what is inside. Remind us that to do that, we need to offer them hospitality, to sit down with them, perhaps at table, ask questions, and listen to their stories. May we try harder to place ourselves at tables that are round, where no one has a special place, where all are equal and your Spirit hovers over us all. capacity to look into the deepest corners of our minds and hearts, finding our sorrows, our concerns and worries, but also the things we celebrate. But we still bring them to you now in a moment of silence. We keep in our prayers those whom we know are struggling, those who are going through treatments that will offer a cure or a better life, those who are struggling with anxiety, having to make difficult choices, those who can't see in because of closed blinds, who feel left out at the end of the table. We keep in our prayers college and university students who are heading off to new experiences that will challenge them in various ways of life. May they learn how to choose their new friends wisely, use their time carefully, balancing schoolwork with recreation. Our elementary students and high school youth and their teachers, as they join together to expand their knowledge and learn how to treat each other as equals, respecting each other's gifts and talents. And for those taking their last relaxing summer excursions, may they enjoy family, friends, but come safely home. And I add these words that reflect in new ways those Jesus gave us. Indwelling God, infused throughout all existence, we honor you with many names. Your realm is within the human heart. We accept life for all that it can be on earth as throughout all creation. May we continue to draw sustenance from this earth, and may we receive forgiveness equal to our own. May we ever move from separation towards union, to live in grace with love in our hearts forever and ever. Amen. Let us sing.
We live in God's world as God's co-workers.
bits of goods put together that can overwhelm the world.